Next one willing to die?
There are a lot of science fiction RPGs out there, and one that tries to explore the space combat aspect of the genre is Starwolves. Set 200 years in the future, with humanity divided in a power struggle between a galactic emperor and oligarchic corporations, Starwolves offers many challenges, the first of which is getting the damn thing running properly. As you can see here in the menu, there are some issues. The biggest obstacle is the performance. This game performs like Cyberpunk on a Chromebook out of the box, but luckily the Steam community forum has the fix. Downloading and installing the legacy DirectX linked in this thread had my game running smooth as silk, and everything seemed great until I got into a mission. The resistance from the vacuum of space instantly stops all bullets as soon as they exit the barrel. Luckily, the Steam community came in clutch again, and the solution is simple. Just set compatibility mode to Windows 98 and add this line to the loading parameters in Steam. This makes our bullets remember Newton's first law of motion again. So now that the game is playable, what's it like? As soon as we started, a cutscene plays to explain the setting. Humanity's been colonizing space for a few hundred years, and while we are ruled by an emperor, most real power lies with 3 big corporations. We're also introduced to our character, a space trucker piloting a transport ship which gets ambushed and destroyed by pirates. We swear revenge after ejecting with our escape pod, and apparently spend our time in the pod reading Soldier of Fortune, because after this, we decide to change careers and found a PMC. We co-found the mercenary company Starwolves together with a former Navy pilot called Ace and start accepting contracts. The first thing we have to do is pick a specialization for our guy. There are 4 to choose from: piloting, gunnery, missiles, and electronic warfare. Piloting improves speed and maneuverability, gunnery improves accuracy and damage with guns, and missiles does the same, but with missiles. Electronic warfare determines how effective our ship systems are, like active missile protection, repairing, and shield regeneration. After we pick a specialization, we can start going on contracts. These early missions are what you'd expect for small-time mercs, like security patrols and smuggling, with pirates as our enemies. Combat is pretty basic. You right-click an enemy to target it, and let the AI take the wheel from there. This can be a little finicky, which is why I pause to switch targets all the time. The biggest way we can impact combat after that is with active abilities we can use a limited number of times during a mission. You get more of these from some items and from investing XP into improving certain skills. The fighters we start out with are pretty bad, but on top of them we also get a mothership, Starwolf, which is our real trump card in the early game. With a massive health pool and 4 heavy weapon turrets, it can slice through the early game pirates like a 1000-degree knife through a Coke bottle. Once destroyed, ships sometimes drop the stuff they have equipped, like their weapons and systems as well as their pilots, who can eject with an escape pod. You can then beam these things aboard by parking the Starwolf close to the loot, and if you grab the pirates' escape pods, you even get paid a bounty for them after the mission. Your pilots also earn experience points after missions, but there's no leveling up. Instead, you can invest their XP into perks that either improve their stats in some way or give them more and better active abilities. The descriptions for the perks are also great. Not only do they actually say exactly what the perk does instead of vaguely hint like some other RPGs do, they also have flavor text giving an in-universe explanation for what the perk does, like saying our pilot's natural accuracy and knowledge of ships' weak spots gives him a 5% chance to score critical hits. I like this. It's really the best of both worlds. Lots of item descriptions even have little tidbits of lore in them, so eat your heart out, Dark Souls. Starwolves did it first. After a few of these starter missions, we're able to figure out where the pirates are coming from and head over there to catch the pirate leader, the Red Corsair, with a bounty of 50,000 space bucks on his head. A ridiculously high reward at this point of the game, when our other jobs only pay a few thousand each. So we go after the Red Corsair and fight through a fleet of pirates as he flees through a portal. This is how FTL works in the setting, by the way, with ships only able to come and go from systems through a network of portals. This is also how missions work. The game is an open world. Jobs start with us entering a system, typically through a portal, and ends with us leaving through a portal and then picking a new job from a menu. We follow the Red Corsair through the portal and are beset by a horde of pirates he sends to stop us. This fight perfectly illustrates just how random the combat in this game is. Sometimes our pilots channel their inner Legolas and hit every shot they take, wiping out groups of enemy fighters in seconds. Other times it's like the ships are being piloted by the goddamn A-team because they just keep missing. This goes for the enemy too, which is why this fight is a good example since Ace gets the undivided attention of about 10 pirate fighters, and while they get the occasional hit in, he's able to survive this for several minutes, long enough for us to turn the tides and destroy the pirates without him going down. Part of this is also because the enemy AI seems to laser focus on whatever target they see first and rarely swap targets. Once the pirate fleet is defeated, we go to their base, snag the Corsair's ship, and capture the man himself, and he gives us an offer. He's tired of the pirate life and wants to go legit, offering to join our crew if we don't turn him in, and this is actually an interesting choice. The bounty on his head is massive, and buying stuff between the missions is the most reliable way of upgrading our ships. Plus we have personal beef with this guy after he destroyed our ship in the intro cutscene. On the other hand, a third crew member at this stage of the game is a pretty big upgrade, and recruiting him unlocks a mission where we can recruit a fourth crew member sooner than if we turn him in. Recruiting the Red Corsair has another downside though, and that's his specialization. Just like our main character, crew members we recruit also have specializations. Ace's is gunnery and the Corsair's is missiles. Why is that a downside, you ask? Well, most missiles have a high damage and home in on their targets, meaning they rarely miss. To make up for this, missiles are used up when they're fired, meaning every time you shoot a missile, that's money you're shooting. There are also countermeasures both we and the enemy can install on our ships to counteract missiles, and most enemies that aren't low-tier pirates are likely to have these installed, meaning you need better missiles to get through their defenses, meaning you're shooting more money at them when you could have destroyed them just as easily for free just by using regular guns that don't cost money to shoot. If you recruit the Corsair, you do get another bonus. He can use his criminal connections to access the black market much earlier than others. Normally you only have access to the regular trade post between missions, but you can invest into a perk for the Corsair or Ace to learn the secrets of the dark web to access the black market where you can buy more advanced stuff, but for a higher price. The perk is much cheaper for the Corsair than Ace, meaning he can get it sooner, letting you get some pretty strong stuff before it's available on store shelves. Whichever choice we make, our next mission is to escort a transport ship carrying humanitarian aid to the Lenovar system, which is under siege by pirates. We hear on the news that this system is the last in the sector still independent from the big corporations. Speaking of the news, I like the narrator that reads them.
When will the patrol units or the Navy be sent to the system? Remember, Lenovar remains the last system in the sector of Phoenix, which has not signed a supply contract with one of the major corporations, and currently use independent businessmen.
He reminds me a bit of the Codex narrator from Mass Effect. Sadly, the rest of the English voice acting does not live up to the same standard.
Ship got some scratches. Let's try like in hell. It is down.
He is history!
Which is strange because the credits only credit 2 voice actors, one male and one female, when at least some of the male voices sound very different from each other and all of them sound worse than the news anchor. So either that one guy has some good vocal range or the game has more voice actors than the credits do. As for the rest of the sound, the music is pretty good, with the ambient music having an even mix of synthy sci-fi music and acoustic strings that I really like. Most of the combat music, however, is rock, and while I didn't like it as much as the ambient stuff, there were enough tracks to stop it feeling repetitive. The rest of the soundscape is harder to judge, since you can only hear the sounds ships make when zoomed in really close, which I wasn't most of the time, and even then I couldn't hear most of it over the music. As we enter the besieged system and meet up with our client, we discover that the pirates are just a smokescreen for the Triad, one of the big corporations, who are the ones really blockading the system in order to force them to end their independence from the companies. We fight the Triad security forces, who are a nice step up in difficulty from the pirates, and break the blockade, delivering supplies and destroying both the Triad mothership and their station in the system. For this, we get made honorary citizens of the Lenovar system, get paid, and get a new crew member, Astra, the pilot of the transport ship we escorted for most of the mission. Her specialization is electronic warfare, which we desperately need at this point. A lot of the enemies we encounter are starting to use homing missiles, and the best way to counteract this is to use an electronic warfare specialist with an anti-missile system installed. You can sort your fighters into groups called wings, which lets you control them like a single unit, and lets ships with an anti-missile system shoot down missiles targeting other fighters in the wing. If you have a pilot with all the perks improving their anti-missile abilities and a good anti-missile system installed, both of which you can get pretty early, missiles become a complete non-factor for the rest of the game. If you don't have this though, or your electronic warfare ship gets taken out, your fighters can get HIMARSed to death in seconds. Throughout the early game, we've heard on the news about the discovery of an advanced ancient Precursor civilization that left a bunch of their crap behind before mysteriously disappearing. Kind of a sci-fi setting without those, I guess. Now we've heard a rumor that a portal to one of their armories has been found, so we head there to try grabbing some artifacts. Once we get into the system, we run into someone with a portrait, which means a recruitable crew member. His name's Heretic, and we've actually seen him before in a cutscene way back before the first mission, where he stole Ace's fighter as we were enjoying a romantic date. He's also looking for Precursor artifacts, so we press gang him into our crew and head off to find the portal. Like Ace, his specialization is gunnery, which I found to be the most useful one. If we recruited the Red Corsair, we get an optional mission where we're able to recruit Heretic before we break the Triad blockade. In that mission, the recruitment process works about the same. The Corsair gives us a tip about a guy that knows about the Precursors, we find Heretic, and force him to join our crew at gunpoint. Either way, we find the Precursor portal after some investigating, and find it's guarded by a Precursor fighter. And it's a monster. Its gun can shred any of our fighters in an instant. The only ship that can tank a few hits is the Starwolf, but even it can't last long. It can also take more hits than Rocky Balboa before going down, so it takes us a few tries to destroy it. Eventually it goes down though, and after that we find out it was all for nothing. The portal requires Precursor DNA in order to activate it, and guess what? We don't have any. So we leave, but not empty-handed. The fighter has a chance to drop its weapon, and even though it's incompatible with human ships, the item description says a specialist might be able to install it in a human fighter. Or you can sell it. It's 80,000 credits. That's a lot of cash. After this, most of our jobs are for the big corporations, primarily the Triad. They want to bury the hatchet, and we want well-paid work, so everyone wins. These corporate jobs usually fall into the category of either ambushing transports or defending transports from ambushes, and their enemies tend to be the other big corporations. The three big corporations are the Triad, that operates like an organized crime group, Inoko, who specialize in scientific development and mainly use high-tech laser weapons, and USS, who specialize in industry and mostly use missiles. This means Inoko is my favorite to fight, not because they're easy, but because we can salvage those high-tech laser weapons and use them ourselves. This is especially nice because I found heavy lasers to be the best weapons in the game. They deal high damage, can hit from long range, are very accurate, and because they move at the speed of light, they can't be dodged. They're so good that later on when enemy ships start using special shields to counter them, I still find them to be the best weapon. After a couple of these jobs for the corporations, we're hired by the Navy to fight the first real threat in the game, the Berserks. We've heard about them on the news before this and even fought a few of them. They're a fleet of ships controlled by a rogue AI that humanity barely fought off the last time they attacked in force. Our jobs against them are more like a war than anything else we've done so far, with large battles involving dozens of ships. Luckily, the Berserks are a great enemy to fight, partially because they're very easy to kill with our heavy lasers before they can even get close enough to fire back, and partially because most of them come equipped with their own special weapon, the Berserk laser. This weapon isn't particularly good, but it sells for a lot and Berserks drop loads of them, meaning any fight against them sends our income to the moon. The money comes in very handy for upgrading to the next generation of fighter. The game's fighters are split into first, second, and third generation, with us gaining access to these in the early, middle, and late game respectively. First generation fighters tend to look like flying boxes or Blue Origin dick rockets, while second generation fighters are split between chunky flying tanks and fragile looking spindly designs. Third generation ships are sleek, futuristic, and look like you could stab someone with them. Overall, I'd say it lands closer to Nokia than iPhone on a sliding scale of shiny to gritty. The conflict with the Berserks ends when we're contacted by a different AI calling herself L, who invites herself to our ship and joins our crew even if we refuse and demand she leaves. She tells us the mainframe with the AI controlling the Berserks is present in this system, and that if we destroy it, it'll end the Berserk threat. She joins us as a pilot and specializes in electronic warfare with some really nice abilities, including one that disables a ship for 20 seconds, turning off its shields, weapons, and engines. Together with Elle, we destroyed the Berserk mainframe, causing all their ships in the system and presumably elsewhere to instantly die. After this, we hear on the news that mankind has made contact with a race of aliens, and while the early story indicates peace as a possibility, later reports indicate a conflict may be brewing. Our jobs at this time revert to helping the corporations screw each other over. Nothing out of the ordinary happens. We steal a prototype fighter made using Precursor tech from Inoko. We recruit an eccentric scientist with a weird sense of fashion called Phantom, who needs us to protect him from corporate dead enforcers. He can also install the Precursor cannon onto our fighters, but at this stage of the game, it isn't much better than high-end human lasers. Elle leaves mid-mission after finding something interesting in Phantom's research data, and if we recruited the Red Corsair, Heretic also leaves, saying we're too high profile for his liking now. Strangely, he only thinks that if the Corsair is also part of the team. Eventually the story progresses when we're hired by the Imperial agent Viper to find an Imperial official leaking information to the corporations by eavesdropping on a meeting between the trader and the corporate agents. After we identify the traitor and destroy a corporate station in the system, Viper joins our crew as its final member. She specializes in piloting, which should mean she turns and moves faster than the others, but I never noticed the difference, possibly because I always kept all fighters in a single wing. After this mission, we get two story paths to choose from. We can continue working for the corporations, who as always just want us to screw the other corporations over, and culminates with an assassination mission against a witness in the trial of a corporate higher up. Or we can work with the Empire, who for starters want us to assassinate the traitor feeding info to the corporations, and then fight alongside them in the full-scale war that is now broken out with the aliens. The aliens are the endgame threat in the game, but their over-reliance on shields and lackluster weapons mean they're not more dangerous than other enemies individually. But most of the time we fight them, they appear in massive numbers, so the biggest risk is gradually getting worn down in a war of attrition. Another problem at this point in the game is that while we've upgraded all our fighters to advanced models, our big ship the Starwolf, barring a few upgrades to shields, self-healing and cannons, is still largely the same ship we started the game with. And while its health pool made it a serious tank back then, in the late game, we need to babysit it constantly, because if even just a single enemy wing decides to target it, it can get taken out against a Japanese carrier at midway. This is extra bad since if you lose a fighter, you can just retrieve the pilot's escape pod, give him another fighter, and continue the mission, while if you lose the Starwolf, it's an instant game over. After finishing one of the quest chains, we receive a distress call and head off to investigate, but when we arrive through the gate, we find a standoff between the Navy and corporate forces. The Navy is ordering all corporate security forces to come under their command to aid in the war, which the corporations refuse. It turns out the Emperor started the war with the aliens by attacking their embassy and is using the war as an excuse to consolidate his power over the Empire, and the corporations are ready to rise up in rebellion to preserve their power. A private military rising up in rebellion against the dictator for wanting them to integrate into the command structure of the regular military to fight a war the dictator started to further his own political goals? That could never happen in real life. We're given a choice of whether we want to join or oppose the March of Justice, and the ending changes depending on what we choose. If we side with the Emperor, we first destroy a corporate transport in a mission that's more interesting from the corporate side. We then go on to the final job of the game. Imperial scientists have found a Precursor skull containing the DNA needed to activate the portal we found way back at the beginning of the game, and believe the portal leads to a Precursor superweapon, the Starhammer, that can cause stars to go supernova. Once in the mission, we fight our way past masses of corporate and alien fighters, retrieve the skull, and use it to enter the portal to the Precursor armory. It's guarded by Precursor ships, but with 3rd generation fighters and high-end lasers, they aren't much of an obstacle anymore. After some puzzle solving, we retrieve the Starhammer, but as we go to leave, we're intercepted by L, who has taken over the Berserks and wants the Starhammer to create a new world order, so she attacks us. If we fail, we get a cutscene where she uses the Starhammer to possibly wipe out humanity?
Humans, lower creatures pretending to be gods. By an absurd accident, I owe my existence to them. They accomplished their wish by giving birth to me. Now they have to leave and free the place for new, higher minds.
But as long as we keep the Starwolf out of harm's way, her forces are relatively easy to take out, since they're the same Berserks we fought at the beginning of the game, and they haven't gotten any better since then. She also somehow creates doppelgangers of our main character Ace and asks her to fight us, but they go down pretty easily. Once she's defeated, we leave through the portal, and a cutscene with some awful audio mixing place where she attacks again, but with overwhelming numbers, so we use the Starhammer to blow up the star just before we leave, presumably destroying L in the blast.
Phantom, are you able to operate its weapons?
Yes, but
Then do it. Shoot!
total damage will be dealt to them.
If you don't shoot, then total damage will be dealt to us.
We turn the Starhammer over to the Emperor, who uses it to enforce his authority over the corporations. Under his rule, the war with the aliens never ends, and the bureaucrats that once made up the government are replaced by veterans loyal to the Emperor, basically turning the setting into Starship Troopers. If we side with the corporations, the first difference is that Viper leaves the group since she's loyal to the Emperor. We also get the other side of that transport ambush, where now we have to defend the transport. Turns out the transport is carrying linguists that have translated the aliens' language and need to be escorted to the alien flagship to end the war. We get them to the aliens and they quickly establish a ceasefire, making the aliens neutral. As we go to leave, Viper tries to stop us, so we have to put her down. In the final mission, we still go to the Precursor portal, but can't open it because we don't have the skull. So instead, we wait for the Navy to retrieve the Starhammer, attack them as they're leaving, and steal it. We then head to a system with stations from all 3 corporations to turn the Starhammer over to them. But in a shocking twist, these guys that have spent the entire rest of the game screwing each other over try to screw us over and kill us, even if we willingly hand the Starhammer over to them. The combat encounter that follows is probably the hardest encounter in the game, with all 3 corporations sending wing after wing of fighters at us from their stations. This goes on for so long that I was starting to think this was a scripted loss like the end of Halo Reach, until L shows up to help fight off the corporate forces. She then tries to fight us, and the fight goes the same as in the other path. After we defeat her, we realize we're now enemies of both the corporations and the Emperor, so we go with a third option. We once again detonate the star to escape from L and head to the Lanovar system, the one we saved from the Triad in the early game. In this ending, the Empire descends into civil war between the Emperor and the corporations, with neither side having a clear advantage without the Starhammer, but the Lanovar system becoming an independent bastion of freedom from both the corporations and the Empire, with its security guaranteed by the superweapon. In conclusion, this is a game with pretty middling combat, a hit-and-miss localization, but world building and story that I found strangely compelling. Though I have a hard time recommending it with all the technical issues I had, it's very cheap, even without a discount. There are also 2 sequels to this game, so there may be videos on those coming in the future. This has been Rom. If you liked the video, you can hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more in the future, you can subscribe to the channel. See ya!